Hey guys, today I want to give you a ton of tips that will instantly improve your gameplay in TFT. Some of these are really straightforward, but that doesn't mean that Diamond and Masters players don't mess them up all the time, and some are more advanced. There are tons of Challenger players who mess up number 9. With that said, let's get right into it. Every game you can expect to get between 12 and 14 item components by the end of stage 4, which doesn't include items from augments or traits like Underground. Why is this important? Because it can affect how you play the early and mid game. If you get a ton of gold from your opener and no items, don't worry, you're still going to get the same number of items by the end of the game. Also, if you receive 10 components at stage 4 carousel, and you're not trying your item slams, you can always wait, since you know you're going to get 2 items from 4-7. Most people know that when you win or lose multiple rounds in a row, you get extra gold, but very few people actually play around this factor as much as they should. The best example is that if you lose the first 3 rounds, unless your board somehow becomes very strong, it's often best to lose the next 2. You can accomplish this by staying level 4, not slamming items, and not making too many strong upgrades. And please, if you lose the first 4, do everything in your power to lose the 5th round, please. On the other hand, if you win the first 2 or 3 rounds, you might want to play for win streak by leveling aggressively and slamming items. The best players in the world know how to consistently win streak and lose streak when it suits them. This is a really important skill to learn, because it can make an insane difference in how much gold you actually have early game, which directly impacts how much gold you have late game. Rerolling is something that I see new players mess up a lot. Please roll at the correct level when you're rerolling. Here's a chart that shows the percent odds of seeing each champion cost at each level. So if you're rolling for 2 costs, roll at level 6. If you're rolling for 3 costs, roll at level 7 or 8. I see so many new players rolling for 3 costs at 6, rolling for 2 costs at 7, and it's just going to decrease your chance of hitting incredibly high. It's a pretty basic tip, but definitely learn it. Another rerolling tip is the concept of slow rolling. So if you don't know about this, this is rolling any gold you have above 50 gold so that you maintain your 5 interest threshold, but you still get to roll for upgrades. You should use this technique when you're far off from hitting your reroll comp and healthy enough that you can afford to lose a few rounds since you're not going to roll down all your gold immediately. This next tip is insanely important, something that so many players, myself included, mess up. It's knowing how much to roll. I think about knowing how much to roll when you stop rolling as the product of 4 different factors. The first one is HP. Lower HP means that you often need to roll more because, say, you lose the next few fights, you might just end up dead. If you're higher HP, it means you can oftentimes roll less because you're healthy enough, you're not going to die if you lose 3 fights. The next one is Econ. If you have a ton of gold, oftentimes you can actually delay rolling until the next threshold. So say you have 50 or 60 gold at level 7, you can say, okay, I'm just going to wait a few rounds and then roll level 8, because why would I roll at 7 when I could roll at 8, have a higher chance of hitting my 4 costs, 5 costs, cap out my board a lot higher. Next one is board strength. If you've already hit a ton of upgrades, then you don't need to roll as much. I remember seeing a very high elo player in tournament just natural an insanely strong upgrade, and they basically said, okay, well, I don't need to roll this stage anymore because you've already hit the upgrade. But the value of you rolling goes down because you aren't rolling for that unit anymore, and your board's strong enough that why would you spend gold on rolling when you could just push levels? And the last one is, how many units are you actually rolling for? If you're rolling for 10 units, because your items are flexible and you have a ton of pairs, rolling becomes much better than if you're looking for one specific unit. Next one is a common leveling curve. I put together this common leveling curve to help new players know when they should push to the next level. Please level up at one of these intervals. Like, I am going level 6 on 3-1 or 3-2 every single one of my games. There's room for creativity in TFT, and there are like 1%, maybe 0.5% of scenarios where you don't want to push levels at these intervals, but in general, please, please, please level at these intervals. The aggressive intervals are when you're playing for win streak or when you have a lot of gold, and the passive intervals are when you're playing for lose streak or you just don't have enough gold to go to the next threshold. Following these thresholds can help you stay in line with the power of the lobby so that you can save HP. Next concept is preleveling. Preleveling refers to using gold to purchase XP so that you naturally level up to the next level faster than normal. So for example, putting 4 gold into leveling at 2-3 so that at 2-5 your next 2 gold will naturally level you up to level 5. By hitting level 5 earlier, you get access to higher cost unit faster, which can be good if that's what you're looking for. However, this does decrease your chance of hitting 1 cost units. So if you have a ton of 1 cost pairs, this might not be the time to use this strategy. The next concept is strongest board. It's probably the most important concept in this video, but it's also the hardest to explain. So let's go with an example. Say you had this board in shop at 2-3. What board do you want to play this round? Pause the video right now and say what units you would buy, swap out, sell, what you would do. If you set a board like this, you were right. if you didn't consider why you were wrong. Making the most out of the units in your shop is one of the hardest skills in TFT. You have to constantly evaluate every single unit in every single shop and see if it's upgrade over any unit on your board. Add items to this, add the ability to level and roll whenever needed, and you can see why it's very difficult to always play strongest board, and this is something that even challenger players mess up. But by simply evaluating every single unit in your shop and seeing if it would be stronger than a unit on your board, you'll have a huge advantage over people who are not doing this. Because so many people just stay autopilot the entire game, they hit a 2-star carry and they say, okay, I'm gonna sit on this until late game, but that is very often not the correct way to play out the game. Next one is about augments. So your first augment is completely random. However, your second and third augments are impacted by the units currently on your board. You want to get an admin heart? You need 2 admin or you will never ever see that augment. Even more crazy, you want to see cybernetic uplink or cybernetic shell? You need 3 different units with items on your board or else you will never see a cybernetic augment. Knowing these conditions and tailoring your board to the augment that you want is a hugely important way to make the game give you what you want. Sadly, Riot doesn't release this information, so you have to piece together knowledge from different sources, whether that's streamers or just your own games or stats websites. I put a spreadsheet in the description down below based on set 7.5 augments, which can help you with things like cybernetics that carried over, and it can also help you figure out things like admin that are basically the same as other traits in the past. The next one is about items. Please don't leave items on your bench and wait for perfect items. The stronger lobbies you play in, the more you're going to get punished for having 5, 6, 7 components on bench. I have coached people before who have 10 components sitting on their bench doing nothing. You are literally not using 5 full items. That is actually insanity. A great rule of thumb is that if you have more than 3 item components on your bench, you should build an item. I actually have a guide to item slamming, so if you're trying to figure out what items to slam, check it out by clicking right up here. Next one is about scouting, which is something that is really straightforward, but no one does it as much as they should. Something that I'm a really big advocate of is that if you're playing for a streak, whether that's win streak or lose streak, you need to be aggressively scouting. So say you win the first 5 rounds and you say, okay, do I want to level to 6 at 3-1? Most people would just auto say, okay, yeah, I won the first 5, so I need to go 6 at 3-1 to play aggressively. What you should absolutely do before you go 6 is scout your next 3 opponents. There's going to be situations where their boards are so strong that going 6 is not going to make a difference, and there's going to be situations where their boards are so weak that going 6 is not going to make a difference. So not going 6 in both of those scenarios is going to save you a ton of gold. This is equally as important for loss streak. When you know you need to lose the next fight, please scout your opponents, because oftentimes there'll be other players who are trying to lose streak, and then you need to make your board as weak as possible so that it'll lose to them. And that's just for win streaking, but also putting your units in the correct spot to avoid key enemy abilities can often swing entire fights. If you're just putting the units in the same spots, taking your hands off, and turn your head and watch an anime on the second monitor, look, there's no judgment, but if you really want to climb, turn off the anime, focus on positioning. The next tip is also related to positioning. You want to guarantee that your Zephyr and Shroud hit the right unit every single time. The easiest way is to equip these items right as the round starts so that you can see what your opponent's positioning looks like. The way that you can get them on your bench is either by selling the unit or using a remover. This often means that you want to put a Zephyr and Shroud on 1-star units that aren't actually that important in your comp, just more supportive units like trait bots, so that you can sell them. There's infinite examples of challenger players who will cycle a Zephyr multiple rounds in a row just by selling a unit and putting in a 1-star copy of it so they can guarantee hit that Zephyr and guarantee hit that Shroud. The last one is about units. So did you guys know that Urgot and Viego actually share a synergy? Even though they don't share any traits whatsoever? The synergy is that Urgot's ult will pull all units towards him, which will end up pulling them into a clump, which is going to make Viego's ult hit more units when he holds. Urgot can often pull the backline up into a Viego ult, which will allow him to potentially win the entire fight. So thinking about units just in terms of their traits and how those synergize is not enough. Building a comp requires you thinking about what each champion does holistically, so not just their traits, but their stats and, importantly, their abilities. Thinking about TFT this way, with each unit being a unique piece that fits together the puzzle of your perfect comp, will help you build much more creative and strong comps that don't just focus on synergies. Think about the goal of your comp and how you are trying to win each and every fight. Of course, synergies are still important, so don't just completely disregard those unless you're playing build diff. And that's it. If your hunger for educational TFT videos cannot be sated, check out this video right over here. It's my guide to the early game, which goes even more in depth on some of these topics. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and also interacting down below with like a like or a comment. It helps out with the algorithm a ton. Also, if you want me to dive even more in depth in these topics personally with you, go in the description down below and check out my Metafy. I do personalized coaching. So if you feel like you're stuck in TFT and you want to learn how to climb even higher, Diamond, Master, Challenger, then check out my Metafy, and I will do my best to help you hit your ranked goal. Thanks for watching.